After World War II, American administrators divided up the Korean peninsula at the 38th parallel. South Korea established a right-wing government, or social hierarchy, where North Korea established a communist government. The failure to hold free elections in the Korean peninsula in 1948 deepened the resentment between North Korea and South Korea. The 38th parallel became a parallel border between the two states where skirmishes and raids would take place. U.S. President Truman felt that it was an obligation of the United States to get involved on the side of the South to keep control of global communism. President Truman got approval from Congress for $12 billion for military expenses. South Korea had the support of 20 countries within the United Nations. North Korea was supported by the Soviet Union, whose leader was Joseph Stalin. North Korean forces invaded South Korea on June 25, 1950, known as the Battle of Osan. This was a surprise attack. The North Koreans had 89,000 men and surprised the South Koreans and Americans, who had only 38,000 men. The South Koreans and Americans were not prepared with the weapons that they needed to fight the North Koreans, who had tanks and more sophisticated weapons. By June 28th, the North Koreans captured Seoul, the capital of South Korea. By July 1st, the Americans became heavily involved. The Americans arrived with sophisticated weapons such as rocket launchers and air support. They also had a plan to head off the North Korean soldiers in Busan. The U.S. Marines surprised the North Koreans in September 1950 and landed in the port of Incheon near Seoul. They were successful at taking back Seoul and pushing the North Koreans back past the 38th parallel almost to the Yalu River. October 1st, 1950 is when the Chinese enter the war on the side of the North Koreans. Chinese leader Mao Zedong secured a commitment from the Soviets to support Chinese forces with air support, and the Soviets put 260,000 men along the Korean border. Although over the next several months the North Koreans made great gains, Stalin did not help as much as Mao had expected, and the Chinese were also running out of food and bullets. July 1951 to July 1953, the war continued, but there was very little land gained for either side. Because the Chinese suffered from deficient military equipment and logistical problems, the Chinese casualties were far greater than that of the UN. There was 340,000 international soldiers, and 88% of them were Americans. 36,560 U.S. soldiers were killed. The total number of casualties were 128,650. In 1953, Eisenhower became President of the United States, and it was then that we made a peace treaty with Korea. The fighting ended on July 27, 1953, when the Armistice Agreement was signed. The agreement confirmed the border being the 38th parallel and also confirmed the Korean demilitarized zone. This was a 2.5-mile zone, a buffer zone, between the two countries. The geography of Korea remains the same today as it was before the Korean War.